Welcome to Little Stories for speech, language, and literacy. This app was developed to help children improve reading fluency, comprehension, speech production, and receptive and expressive language skills, using cleverly written stories we think your kids will love. From the home screen, you can scroll through the stories to find the story you would like to read. You can sort the stories by story title, themes, reading level. For information on how the stories were leveled, tap the question mark. And you can sort by phonemic target. For additional details and a synopsis of each story, tap the information icon located in the lower right corner of each story card. Here you will see the reading level, phonemic target, verb tense, point of view, and a synopsis of the story. The card flip button turns all the cards around to give a detailed overview of all the stories at a glance. There is also a thumbnail view, which allows you to see more stories at a glance and scroll through them more quickly. Tap on the story you wish to read. Tap Read to go directly to the story, or tap Before You Read to review the sight words, phonemic target words, and challenge words in each story. Practicing these words before reading the story can increase reading comprehension, reading fluency, and improve speech production. To practice the words in flashcards, tap the gray flashcard button, then select the words you would like to review. You can select one set or multiple sets. In the lower left corner of the flashcards, you will see the number of flashcards in the set. If there is a word that is unfamiliar to the child, tap on the dictionary icon for a definition of the word. Once you have completed the flashcards, you can tap the pink Read button to go directly to the story, or you can tap the back arrow to return to the word lists. Once you are in the story, you can read the story to the child, have the child read the story to you, or you can tap on the green play button to have the story read to the child. For a full screen view of the illustration, turn the iPad vertically. Looking at the illustration before you read the story and making predictions about the story is a well-used reading strategy that promotes story comprehension. Pre-readers may also enjoy looking at the full-screen illustration while listening to the story. If you are working with older readers that are not interested in the illustration, or younger readers that are distracted by the illustration, you can tap on the gray bar and drag it to the left to enlarge the text field and hide the illustration. If the child is reading the story and they do not know a word, they can tap and hold on the word, then choose to listen to an audio example or view the definition. The settings have options for modifying the text. You can change the font, change the line length for early readers, add a reading helper to assist eye tracking, bold the sight words for a great shared reading exercise, bold the phonemic target words for speech practice, or bold the challenge words to highlight words that may require additional support. For a fun speech exercise, tap on the purple tongue button to open the tongue twister challenge. Have the student say the tongue twister 3 times fast. Record and play back their response to see how well they did. To open the Reading Fluency Test, tap on the pink stopwatch button. The Reading Fluency Test will automatically start recording and timing the child following a 3-second countdown. When the countdown is complete, have the child begin reading the story. Tell them to read their best, not their fastest. Have them skip words they do not know. If the timer on the right is distracting, tap it once to hide it. When they are done reading the story, tap the stop button to end the recording and stop the timer. After you have ended the recording, you have the choice to score the fluency test now, save it and score it later, or start over. To score the test, tap Play to listen to the recording. As you listen, tap on the words that were read incorrectly or words that were skipped. Mark these words as reading errors. By marking reading errors, the app will calculate words correct per minute automatically. Words correct per minute is a commonly used formula to measure reading fluency. If the child does not know what a word means, mark it as a vocabulary error. If the child mispronounces a word, mark it as a speech error. All errors marked can be practiced in flashcards later. To see a list of which errors were marked as reading errors, vocabulary errors, and speech errors, tap on the error counters in the bottom right corner of the screen. When you have finished scoring the child's reading test, tap Done. Then tap Yes, I'm done. Select a student to save the scores to. If you're testing a new student, select Add Name. The only information that is required is the student name. Age and grade can be helpful information when referencing student norms for reading fluency. If you add an email address, you can quickly share student results at the end of the session. Once you have saved your fluency test results, you can choose to go directly to the comprehension activities, view the scores, start a new reading fluency test, or return to the story. The comprehension activities can also be accessed at the end of the story text. The comprehension activities include story retell, sequencing, WH questions, and story talk. Story retell is used to assess comprehension and expressive language. Record the child retelling the story in their own words. If you don't want the picture to be visible while they retell the story, tap the image to hide it. When they have finished retelling the story, tap Stop. You can listen to their retelling before you move on to other comprehension activities and score it later, or you can choose to score it now. Story retell can be scored for story structure and/or expressive language. To score story structure, listen to the recording of the child retelling the story. As you listen, mark whether they included an orientation, complication, action, resolution, and ending in their retelling. If you're not sure whether their response qualifies as a correct answer, tap the question mark to see an example of that part of the story. To score expressive language, listen to the recording of the child retelling the story. As you listen, mark whether the child uses the following parts of speech correctly: nouns and pronouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs, and prepositions. You'll also mark whether they used good rhythm and expression when retelling the story. When you're finished, tap Done, or you can choose another comprehension activity. The sequencing activity teaches the child to put the events of the story in the correct order. When children learn to sequence events correctly, a text becomes more than random details and occurrences. It becomes a story. Our sequencing activity teaches sequencing and story structure. Once the child has sequenced the events of the story, each story element will be highlighted. As they reread the story in sequence, they will notice it is a simplified version of the story. This version exemplifies how speech prompts could be used to teach and encourage a child to include each story element when retelling a story. For example, a good way to introduce a story is to say, "Once there was." A good way to introduce the problem is to say, "But." A good way to introduce the action is to say, "So." And a good way to conclude the story is to say, "Finally." If more support is needed to teach story structure, have the child practice retelling the story again using these prompts. Once there was, but, so, and finally. The WH questions highlight key story elements. Who is the story about? Where and when does it take place? What is the problem? And how is the problem solved? We've added a pause to allow the child to answer the question without any prompts first. When they think they know the answer, they can tap on the arrow and answer a multiple-choice question. Story Talk has 3 parts to it: Let's Talk, A Closer Look, and Related Stories. Let's Talk has story-specific questions on 5 question cards. Many of the questions require more developed answers and critical thinking. There are questions that allow the reader to express their opinion or talk about their own experience, questions that require inferential thinking, and questions that require the reader to pull the answers directly from the text or reference the story illustration. If at any time the student needs to refer back to the story, they can tap on the story icon in the upper right corner of the screen to reference the story and illustration. A Closer Look is a brief discussion on the narrative aspects of each individual story. We discuss story topics, story trivia, Literary techniques, narrative structures, and narrative genres our stories exemplify. A closer look is just another example of how these little stories can do so very much. You can use them to teach a lot of principles about narrative. The related stories display more stories written with similar themes. These stories can be used to compare and contrast how the stories are the same and different. When you have finished the comprehension activities, tap Done to return to the story. Tap Home to return to the story selection screen. Kids love the coloring activity. You can select up to 5 coloring pages to email or print for school or home use. Or you can choose one coloring page to color in the app. As you swipe your finger across the screen, the colorful illustration is revealed. But watch for little B. He's always hiding somewhere in the illustration. When you find him, tap on him and he'll be on his way. If you want to find him again, tap the refresh button and he will find a new hiding place. The coloring page is a great place to work on prepositions. Have the child make a prediction about where they think little B is hiding. Over something? Under something? Next to something? Then when you find him, have them tell you where he was. When you're ready to go back to the home screen, tap the Close button to leave the coloring activity. To view the student scores, tap the Clipboard button on the story selection screen. Then select the name of the student whose scores you'd like to view. Above the session details, you will see Reading Fluency data and the Errors Marked data graphed daily as a visual representation of student progress. Below the graphs are the daily session details. Session details can be sorted based on the header that is selected. Date, story read, words correct per minute, reading accuracy, fluency test completed, or comprehension test completed. If a fluency test is incomplete or not tested, there will be no scores in the words correct per minute or reading accuracy columns. If comprehension activities were completed, the icons representing the activity will be in color. If only part of the activity was completed, the icon will only be partially filled in. Tap on a specific session to view more detailed results for reading fluency, story retell, sequencing, and WH questions. On the Reading Fluency screen, you can listen to the recording of the child reading the story. You can view a list of the reading errors, vocabulary errors, or speech errors from the story, and even practice them in flashcards. The words correct per minute and reading accuracy scores are also displayed. There is reference information next to each with benchmarks and reference guides for reading fluency and readability. If you have not scored the test or would like to make changes to the results, tap the Edit Results button. This will take you to the same scoring environment shown earlier in this tutorial. When you have finished, tap Done. On the Story Retell screen, you can play back and listen to the recording of the student retelling the story while viewing the results for story structure and expressive language. If you haven't scored the story retell or would like to make changes to the results, you can tap Score Now or Edit Results. The sequencing results display which story elements were put in the correct order, and the WH question results display which questions were answered correctly. The Notes tab is always visible at the bottom of the screen while viewing session details. You can add notes at any time. To email or print session results, tap on the Share Scores button at the top of the screen. For more information about our little stories, tap on the Parents and Teachers button. Here you will find some amazing information about all of our learning activities, detailed information about navigating this app, and the Common Core standards our little stories target. We recommend that you spend some time here, especially in the Learning Activities section. While there is a great deal of information within the app activities, much of the information found in this section is only available here, so be sure not to miss it. We hope you found this video helpful, and we wish you the best as you use little stories to help your little learners achieve their speech, language, and literacy goals.